Welcome to Her Palette with Assumpta Dickens, a talk show brought to you by Omega & Co. in collaboration with Oroco Radio. Welcome, Henrika Muthoni Amoafo.
Yes, ma'am. Full name on display. Don't look full name. Please don't look me up.
Okay, so a bit about Henrika. Henrika is a cultural practitioner who uses her capacity as an art enthusiast and curator, yogi, writer, and facilitator to understand herself, make sense of the world around her, collaborate across boundaries, and to enable her to drive change. She empowers others by creating a community dedicated to compassion, growth, wellness, while holding space for authenticity within herself and others.
Wow, is that me?
That's you.
Sounds so pretty.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. It's like a,
Wow.
yeah.
Honestly, I would say a lot of or parts of that definition come from or have come from the people around me, right? Because sometimes you need to write a bio for something and you're not really sure what to say. Titles can be tricky, like what do I do really in this professional capacity? What do I highlight? And so a lot about the bringing out authenticity in others, other people have told me about, like this is how we receive you. And so incorporating that in how I describe myself has actually been really helpful because otherwise it's a bit tough, you know? But yeah, that's me.
I love that. I love that.
Thanks.
So Henrika's approach to the art world has been through the lens of her combined interest in well-being, gender equity, culture, local patronage, and storytelling, while seeing it for the financial market it is,
Yeah.
but never losing the sense of its magic and potential to change lives and worlds. Again, welcome, Henrika.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to
Awesome.
be here. No, really,
Let's go.
I am. Okay, next.
I'm really happy you're here.
Jump in.
Yes, let's get right into it. So, can you share insights into your journey within the contemporary art world?
Okay. When I was thinking about how this whole thing started, honestly, it took me back to high school, in fact, where I did an AP art history class. And that kind of opened my mind up to the importance of art in the world's history, not just as this beautiful thing. My siblings are artists, so I've always understood it as something important, but not on the world stage. So understanding art history was the first point. Then when I finished university, my first job was at a brokerage, financial brokerage, but they were creating an avenue to trade contemporary African art, highlighting the transactional importance of it, so auction details and things like that, but also non-transactional and performance of the artist in the world. So that was kind of where I started to see the backside, the financial side, the business elements to it behind these really beautiful artworks, right? Then I kind of went into learning and development and came back into the arts as a curator, right? I curated my first exhibition in 2022. And that featured a lot of women. And that as well kind of brought me to a different sphere of the art world, right? So as a curator, as facilitator, as someone who wants to highlight the artist's work, which led really well into the commercial gallery I work with now, which is Ada Contemporary. So it's been interesting learning different facets and skills have kind of transferred over into each role, which has been cute, interesting. And yeah, that brings me to today and how I move through the art world from those kind of lenses as well. Yeah.
So, how would you describe your role?
My role exactly. So I think I play multiple roles in this space. So I entered the space as an art enthusiast, which is also very important because that's where patronage comes from. Like for an artist to feel the excitement of the people who are sharing the work, viewing the work, that's an important role. So first, art enthusiast. Then moving into the space of facilitator, practitioner, storyteller, facilitator as well. That changes things. So now it's about systems, it's about documentation, it's about writing, a lot of writing. And yeah, packaging it in a really beautiful way that has the artist's well-being at the core, but also opens it up to the larger world to cultural conversations that are happening outside of the gallery space. So I think that's where I sit at the moment.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about your ethnicity background?
My background, yes, indeed. So I am Kenyan, Kenyan. My mom is from Kenya, which is where I grew up. That's home part one, home A. And then my dad is Ghanaian, but he does live in Kenya, loves the space, has been there for 30 years. So being Kenyan and Ghanaian is like this east-west connection that meet happily in me, and that maybe that's the first instance of my liminality, kind of existing between identities in a way. Yeah, I suppose that also informs how I look at the art world, comparing maybe what's happening in Kenya, what's happening in Accra.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's beautiful to
Yeah.
navigate both worlds and
Yes,
just have knowledge and resources from both as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a feeling of home from the both.
Yeah.
Are you able to highlight how you've seen the contemporary landscape evolve, especially with the rise of African artists and the increasing visibility of women facilitators as well as artists in the space?
Come on, question. Yes, I love it. Yes, I can. For me personally, let's see. The industry at large has gone through a lot of major changes since I kind of came into the space in 2019 and well before that as well. But with things like globalization, things like the internet, AI coming into the space, and also just the confluence of different movements like Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter movement, that poured into African art as well as African American issues or whatever's going on the global stage. So lots of biennials, international exhibitions featuring African artists who've been performing fantastically because we've always been amazing. It's just the attention or the spotlight hasn't really been on us, and now it is. So there's also been lots of artists that are succeeding in the world coming back to pour into their communities. So there's residencies, there's collectives, and more women leading the space, right? I'd say there have been women in the space leading from way before I joined. Like, for example, Bissy Silva, rest her soul. She was a Nigerian curator who opened or founded the CCA in Lagos, Center for Contemporary Arts. She's been working in this space for a really long time, and that's been evolving more and more with women leading art fairs like 154, Tokini Peter side with ArtX, Lagos. More women writing as well, covering the space. You have, who else is out here? Koyo, I always get her name wrong. Koyo Kuo, I think she's the facilitator or executive director at the Zeitz in South Africa. So women leading the space very visibly, and then more artists below that. Also gallerists kind of navigating that space or shortening the gap between really rising up and being an emerging artist. So there's been lots and lots of change, I'd say, since I came into the space. Yeah. For sure.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I loved all the references that you gave, and particularly the recently ended Liminal.
Yes.
And the Nigerian Imaginary, curated by
Andrea. Exactly.
That was beautiful.
Black woman, Nigerian curator.
That was
on the global
beautiful.
Stage. Stunning.
I think that for me, I could really just relate to, because I'm Nigerian,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of like some of the quotes that she used to sort of just get the messaging out.
Yep.
Like, in that condition we bank crayfish.
Exactly. And also
Like-
breaking it down like that because you're on a global
Exactly.
stage. So bringing people into that local context. I love it.
Such
and
a way to be inclusive.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that the theme of inclusivity is something that's also being sparked a lot.
Yes.
A lot of conversations around that in how some of the spaces are quite exclusive.
Yeah. And have been for like centuries, truly. So
Yeah.
it's about time that there's accountability with the visibility as well.
Yeah, exactly.
To hold people to,
Yeah.
why do you have a black artist here? Is it so that you can say you have a black artist, or because you're really trying to understand their context and elevate it? So this Venice Biennial was really, really interesting in that regard, even beyond Nigeria with
Want to tell.
Ethiopia, all of it. I really love
Want to tell. We're going to get into that.
From a
Want to
distance.
tell.
Sure,
Yes, from a distance.
from a distance.
Okay, as a young woman professional in the art space, how do you envision navigating the balance between tradition and innovation, especially considering the challenges posed by societal norms and expectations?
Yeah. Okay, for sure. First, I think we can't do without tradition. It's extremely important. And we shouldn't toss it aside because of new things, right? It's easier to build on that tradition by understanding it, learning from it, understanding the issues within it, what has been a bottleneck for women, what has held Africans back as a whole, what is going against environmentalism, or whatever it is that you're keen on in whatever your practice is as an artist,
Right.
architect, designer. Understanding the tradition and the history and the knowledge that came before can be your launch pad to innovate, right? Because if you don't know what the issues have been, you're just repeating the same things over and over, maybe. So yeah, I think they kind of go together. Study the tradition, understand the history, acknowledge the canon that has been set before you in art movements, in whatever the case may be, and then riff off of that with your own unique voice in a way. And innovation, I think it should really be to meet needs and to be very functional. Like, it should always be helpful,
Right.
right? So yeah, keeping that in mind to balance things out. So my role maybe as a curator, as a facilitator, or potential future gallerist, right? What has been happening, writer, even whatever, what has been said about this space, right? If I'm using the writer as an example, what has been said about this space before? What are the voices? What are the angles, perspectives? Great, I understand where we are. What's my unique perspective as well? What am I adding? How am I changing this? Same as gallerist, artist, curator. It's key to understand first and then build off of that. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
a delicate balance, I would say.
Yeah, and how do you preserve your artistic integrity and passion while embracing new perspective and new approaches?
What comes to mind with this question for me is, yes, the tradition and the innovation, but also the age we exist in is social media, right? And the exposure we have to global perspectives, what our peer group is doing around the world, and how that can be a huge inspiration for your artistic practice, whatever it is, again, can also be very stifling in comparison, right? And sometimes I find myself in that place of comparison, like, wow, look at all these amazing women who are the same age as me, maybe, or around the same age, have all the same resources, tools, knowledge to some extent, and are doing beautiful, fantastic things, right? So you get a bit of stage fright, like, oh, what am I adding to the conversation? Is my voice even needed? But if I flip that on its head, which I've started to try and do, I look for inspiration or archetypes that I can study, you know? Like the women that I listed before, they're incredible, but not to let it be like, damn, they did it all or they had better platforms, but to list people that I'm existing with in parallel and study them, support them in a way, learn from them, right? So examples, let's see. Maybe I'll start from farther out and move in. So like Solange, she's not my homegirl, but the way that she's authentic in everything she does, and she expresses herself in multiple avenues, right? If it's pottery or glasswork or music, performance art, writing, putting on plays, musicals. She wrote a whole score for a ballet. It's all incredible, and she is the one who sets the limit for herself, and she doesn't do that. She doesn't set a limit, right? Or Museum Mami, right? Kimberly Drew, who approaches everything from that place of authenticity and taps into avenues. She's
Right.
podcaster, musician, all of this. Or Farida, who has the traveling exhibitions. And there's so many ways to see the people around you who are doing incredible things and be inspired. So I'm trying to do that more as opposed to comparing, and then taking the best parts in principle and applying it to what I want to do, right? It's a bit of a convoluted way to get there, but that's kind of what I try and do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that just by you like mentioning some of these names that we both know, we
Yeah.
both follow, because they inspire us a lot. Kimberly recently, posted a couple of stuff on her page.
Yeah.
And she really spoke about the length of time she's been in the space, but then also feeling the difficulty in breaking into the space. Right?
Yeah.
And I want to just talk a bit about that challenge as Black women we face, just what do you know about that particularly, and what exactly do you see at the roadblocks? What are the blocks? It's like well, again, we can put it back to like tradition,
Right.
and then all that being the whole bureaucracy of like the art space and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to hear your
The
thoughts.
roadblocks for women. Boy, I think I wouldn't isolate the art world in relation to women, right? So what I mean by that is the issues women have in the world at large apply to the art world, and maybe even more so because it's always been such a male-dominant, Caucasian, Western space, a very hard space that women have really had to fight their way into, and that's part of the education, right? Going way back to see the women that were influential when women were not allowed to study art, women were not allowed to do all of these things. And so the same way women have trouble speaking about money, have trouble setting the standard, setting the price, being their voices being elevated over certain men's, having to contort yourself and almost degrade yourself in order to get a sale, and all of these things that apply in the world over are also seen in the art industry. But in terms of being a Black woman, speaking to Kimberly's experience, like in Venice and beyond, I would say I haven't had too much experience with that because I think my career began in a very Black-centric space, but maybe in conversations with collectors and their tone and some of the expectations they have because you're an African or because this is our context. I've picked up on some of those, but I really think I've been fortunate to not really deal with a lot of that vitriol and patriarchal BS in this space. I don't know. How about you, though? I'm curious with Judith Ellen and things like that.
I think that's similar to you.
Yeah.
I'm very accustomed to working in the African space.
Yeah.
So I would say that that experience doesn't really apply here. But in the light of more African artists getting visibility there,
Yes.
and then seeing the feedback, and I think that you posted something recently that said that we had never had this much Africans being
Presence,
represented over there,
Yep.
right? But in the space of they still having to go through what, like, racism and, not being invited to spaces,
Yep.
all of that.
Yep.
And I think it's also just, it all comes down to the metrics of what you deem as successful in the art space, whether as an artist, whether as a facilitator, whether as a curator, whether as a writer. And it's sort of like a warning not to define your metric of success by how many tables you are invited to.
Yeah.
Right.
Success and worth,
Yes.
And that also comes in pricing. I just thought of something while you were speaking about women artists. Yes, there are some wonderful, beautiful ones performing really well at auction, but the highest auction record for women is still miles below what any man has ever sold for. So even though we're in there, it's difficult. So people like Solange who create their own table, but you also shouldn't have to. Like, my art should speak for itself. Because I'm a woman who's created it doesn't mean it needs fewer zeros.
Yeah.
And that's tough to navigate.
Your art should speak for itself. Your
Yeah.
practice as a
Your
curator
practice.
should speak
Yes,
for
yes,
itself.
yes, your
as a
writing.
facilitator, as a director, should speak for itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the unfortunate part of this entire thing is, I watch how very much so we here replicate what they do in the West.
Yeah.
So I see us as we are growing more and more into our own spaces. There's also some of that. Would the term be copying or
Yeah.
it's
Emulation.
kind of emulation. It's like the emulation of the wrong things.
True.
Right?
Of what we see to have worked.
Exactly.
Right? We
It's
want it
like
to work for us.
the less inclusive it is, maybe that's the better. All this very, what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
No, I do. Because
that emulation, it's like
we're modeling it off of a market that's very different to ours, of a context that's very different to ours.
Yeah.
African context, we're communal, where all of these things that is not really mirrored in the West. And so the standards we're setting for galleries, even the whole conversation about whether museums are relevant in an African context,
content.
like it's very real and present. I don't know how we're going to figure it
Yeah.
out, if we need to change the mold of what it looks like here, but
I think that definitely starts with the mindset shift.
yeah.
But
for
I
sure.
think
education.
more so starts with some sense of acceptance and surrender to the space that you find yourself in.
Facts.
Because if you date back to our own traditions, our tradition is what preserves,
Yeah.
sort of keeps us together. And our traditions are not the same to the West. It's
sure.
like you need to find what is of value here when it comes to heritage, perseverance, and
Yeah.
preservation.
100%.
And then create structures that replicate that preservation,
Yeah.
as opposed to emulate what's being done in the West. What
Yeah.
might work in the West might
Doesn't
not
work
be
in
the
this
thing that
context.
necessarily works
We don't
here.
even have all the tools
But you
and
see,
things.
we make it our own standard of success. It's
Yeah.
like basically, and I don't think that we fully understand that we give something agency and power over us when we do that.
That's true.
But
But it's tough. It's tough because we're coming into a space that is governed by that. Like the rules we learn even as we enter this space are Western and da 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 da. So to break the mold, it takes much more effort, right? And it goes back to the thing of tradition and innovation. How do we understand how the museum works? What is its purpose in the West? Okay, keeping things that were acquired in some way, shape, or form from other cultures. Great. In Africa, what do we need to do? How do we keep our stories, our artifacts, all of these things? So it can serve a different purpose, but understanding that museum as an idea was started in the West. So does that make sense, right? To change it, to make it applicable here instead of taking everything wholesale and we don't need all the parts of it. So it's tough.
I love the institutional angle of this.
Yeah.
I'm also speaking towards how we curate our spaces amongst each other. In the space of creating that environment, that ecosystem is actually supportive,
Yeah.
not performative, or not say we are supportive, but then actually be performative. You,
I get you. It's the side eye for me.
No,
but 100%
true.
no.
At
the core,
yeah,
like,
it's at the
supportive.
core. Like you say, oh, we're building an ecosystem. It's going to be so supportive and inclusive, but
Inclusive for whom? Yeah.
Right?
No, for sure. That's what we need. Again,
Yeah.
finding the holes in what is budding, what's coming up, the galleries, conversations, collectives, still finding the gaps and making space, which I think is fantastic and needed.
Yeah.
Collaboration over competition, and then we'll all kind of
right, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
Yeah.
he spoke about silos, right? That's something I really think about.
Yes.
How there are all these art silos, yes, growing, but so segregated that growing at a slower rate in a way. So safe spaces that maybe are not necessarily commercial, but can foster this discussion, education, and everybody can kind of set the standard from this perspective.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
our perspective,
Yeah.
our own heritage, our own traditions,
Exactly.
how we relate, like based on community,
Yeah.
like communal living, and then sort of like centering around that to actually create a very loving environment.
And institutions and systems and our own auction house and our own, all of it.
Well, everything you just said is
Yeah.
so beautiful. And it's very much the theme of our conversations today, which is self-discovery, how you navigate this space, right? Because as friends, we've spoken a lot about how we navigate the space, being
Yeah.
fairly new in the space as well, but then also navigating it in a way that's intentional, right? In a way that aligns with your own values, your
100.
own morals.
Yeah.
And it's really just path of just healing and
Yeah.
surrender,
Yeah.
So it takes me to your background in yoga and mindfulness and how intriguing that is.
Yes.
And my thought is, how do you integrate these principles into your daily routine, and how do they influence your approach into creativity and problem solving within the contemporary art scene?
Nice. Okay. I love yoga. Yoga is really great, honestly. And it's been part of my life in maybe a less serious way for quite some time. But in 2022, at the beginning of the year, I did a yoga teacher training course. And why I even did that is, again, to learn my craft. Like if it's something I really want to incorporate in my life, I'm doing it so much. I want to learn about it, know the background, the craft, the history, the tradition, and then see how I want to practice it going forward from that baseline. So that was fantastic, right? Mentally healing, physically as well. Just the mind-body connection is next level. I really, really respect that aspect and quality of yoga. So yoga in itself means unity and connectedness. And there's different parts of it. So there's the asana, the physical movement part, the actual part that makes you sweat and stretches you out. But beyond that, there's the principles of how you move through the world, principles of right living, how you relate with yourself and how you relate with others. They're called the yamas and niyamas, right? There's a lot in there. But it's really basic things like if I'm moving through the world, I'm going to focus on cleanliness, on kindness, on charity, on things like that that benefit the community, non-harm. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, right? And then when I am relating with myself and with others, there's deeper things like ahimsa, non-violence, like move through the world not trying to harm anybody or yourself, or truthfulness, things like that. And so off my mat, when I'm not doing the asanas, these principles step into everything else that I do, how I navigate conversations, how I engage with anyone that comes into my path, how I respond to things, right? Taking your time and not getting heated and all of this, because you're kind of coming from a place of equanimity, right? Mm-hmm. So with yoga, I try to get to equanimity, not hectically anxious and not any extreme of emotions. And it's been very helpful. How it helps me move through the art world is, again, through the principles, but I just thought of an example. Actually, when I first started at the gallery, I thought it was a very important role, and it is. I felt the weight of the responsibility of what it is I was doing, and I wanted to do it well, to show up like, I don't want to say perfect, but like to not get things wrong, And that can put a lot of strain and pressure and anxiety on you to do things well all the time. I was so stressed about reacting quickly enough, like responding to things the right way, doing everything, that didn't know how to delegate. But the more I've done yoga, the more I let it really actually sink in and guide the other things I do. It's helped with how I respond. It's helped me be more curious, right? I'm coming into a space that I didn't study per se. I haven't been working in this industry for a very long time. So it's okay to ask questions, like it's actually fine. You're not expected to be an expert, right? So it's helped me approach things from a lens of curiosity and compassion and grace for myself, as well as whoever I'm interacting with. So yeah, on the principle level, it's like my faith, or it's like any other guiding principle. Yeah, that really just keeps you kind to yourself and others, really. Yeah.
Okay, so this brings me to just speaking a bit about today's curated playlist, which features soulful sounds of this era's most introspective artists.
Yes.
And we explore the depths of self-discovery, resilience, and love with a lineup that celebrates women artists who use their music as a means of healing, self-discovery, surrender, and loving life in all its complexities.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Lovingly curated by
yours
myself
truly
and Abby, a friend.
Beautiful.
Yes.
No,
so I got an opportunity to share the playlist with you earlier as well. And there's just such beautiful melodies, which we're definitely going to get into. Okay.
I love music. I'm ready.
So I love that you mentioned you and your role at Ada Gallery. So as a gallery executive of Ada Gallery, how has this milestone broadened your experience in the contemporary arts? What impact do you hope to achieve personally through your efforts in the gallery space in fostering a supportive and mindful environment for artists?
Okay, so first, how it's broadened my perspective, right? Is that
right?
I think,
first of all, maybe how do you feel achieving this milestone?
Which part is the milestone?
Will you exactly? I'm like,
good. So now I was breaking it down. I do think so. I don't think I've viewed it that way really until recently, but when I reflect on and understand my journey, if you will, from art enthusiast to like gallery executive, gallery manager, art practitioner in that way, like I'm really doing this as a living.
You went to Barre before, right?
Yes, I was, but that wasn't necessarily very front-facing. That was very much research, collecting data. There was a lot of calls and social media and copywriting and things like that.
So this is much more front-facing.
Much more front-facing in person too. Because Barre was also kind of during the time when the pandemic was happening, so a lot of it was online, not necessarily in person. With the gallery, it's stretching my skills and pulling me in different ways, or rather pulling out different skills that I didn't know I had from before, from previous experience. So in managing people, in having conversations in the gallery space, speaking with artists, giving feedback to artists about their practice, writing the press releases, which is so important. Like, this is how the world is going to understand what the artist was trying to do. It's really that journey from, I love art, I appreciate it, I think artists are amazing, to, okay, I understand artists, I respect them, I think they need all the resources, the support. I want to write about them in a way that is worthy of their practice. I want to speak about them in a way that really matters. But beyond that, I kind of want to go outside of the art world or art communities and bring other people in who might not necessarily be exposed to art in this way.
I love the way you're speaking in like, this is more like future
Future is very present, yeah.
But I feel like this is something you're currently doing within the space. Like you recently had gallery visits with like Kaneshi Library, all of that.
Yeah.
So I want to speak more about like some of this that you're incorporating into the gallery and what that's bringing up for you, like the experiences of all of that. Because you're living in like a truth. You're literally living in something.
Listen, sometimes it doesn't feel like that, right? And we've spoken a lot about the uncertainty and kind of allowing it to be exciting, allowing it to be... there's this quote by Tracy Ellis Ross. She said, I'm allowing every day the space between where I am and where I want to be to inspire and not terrify me, right? Because a lot of the time, I look at what I'm doing and again, what my inspiration archetypes are doing, and I'm like, there's so much space. Like, there's such a gap before I get there. But what you just said is, I'm doing it now. I truly am living this out. And I think it just takes a second to let that sink in.
Like, what should do in future tense? So what is it all about?
Girl. But there's so much more to do as well. But thank you. And you brought up Kaneshi Library. And that is one of the ways I really want to keep bringing people into this space. The Kaneshi Library is a community library set up in Kaneshi by Aluma Roots, which is a nonprofit, just really hoping to nurture communities in Accra. And so we have gone to their space before with an artist to have workshops there. We've brought them into our space, again, breaking that barrier of like, this white space is not for me, I'm not supposed to understand this. Break that and just make it for everybody. And I think that's how art will change lives, that's how art will educate, change mindsets, and even break the gap between children and older people. If your children are the ones bringing you into the art space when you're maybe an accountant, it's never been for you. There's more organic avenues, I think, to bring everybody in. And so, yeah, I'm curious about exploring those more. Or as I am doing it now, hoping to do more.
Yeah. I really love the roundup.
Cool.
It's like just intentional living, navigating the art world, in the different spaces that you get to occupy.
Yeah.
And just maximize that with your tools, your thoughts, your talents, your gifts,
community, people like
and impact.
Yeah.
Being on the advisory board of the New Bouquet Foundation. Suggests a commitment to community and advocacy.
Yeah.
How do you leverage this commitment to promote personal well-being and conscious practices within the space?
Yeah. So New Bouquet Foundation is a space another beautiful, brilliant, important institution. I really respect Odile Tevi, the founder, and the work that she's been doing in this space for a really long time. I think how I align with the mission of New Bouquet, for example, is they're really keen on preserving heritage, cultural heritage, knowledge, and the ways that they do it through workshops, through poetry, through having a separate sort of satellite space in WA to explore different mediums like weaving. Just the way that they go about everything really aligns with the kind of impact that I want to have in the space of preserving knowledge, of archiving, of advancing the space a little bit, but also really being a hub and a welcoming, safe space for artists to explore. And yeah, what was the second part of that question?
It's more so what you are committed to, basically.
Okay, good. Perfect. So it aligns with the values of New Bouquet that I am, in the way I move through the art world, in the way I advocate for artists, support artists. I'm a patron of the arts, write about the arts. All of these ways are part of the impact I want to have. So whatever I'm doing now, the press releases, these conversations, whatever future books or whatever future anything that comes out of it, I understand that it's going to form the canon of African art in the future. So it's really important actually how we document this space and time, and that's part of the impact I want to have. So along with bringing in communities, making sure people are focusing on their self-care, because artists can forget about that a lot of the time, and making it a sustainable practice for artists, for the people who enjoy the art, and just everyone within the space. So it's kind of all tied in that way. Yeah.
Nice.
How about you? I know you're interviewing me, but I'd like to hear your answer to that.
What was the question?
What did you ask me? What kind of impact do you want to have in this kind of creative space?
So I think I would say,
Yeah.
I don't think I
know.
would say, and I would know, I know. First and foremost, I'm very committed to development.
Good.
Right? I've always been, how can we grow? How can we develop?
Yeah.
What do we need to get to the next stage type of person?
Mm-hmm.
And that has sort of just evolved in my role as well, in the way that I work with artists to develop their body of work,
Nice.
whatever the workshop looks like. It's all towards artistic growth.
Nice.
Right? So for me, I'm committed to growth. And I'm committed to seeing that in all the different ways that's possible.
Amazing.
Personal, community-wise, and just global in a sense. I feel like growth starts within. It's that mindset shift of, I can get to the next level, just by putting in, what do I need? What kind of structures do I need to be able to get there? And, and just taking it one bit at a time, but
One
realizing
step.
that it's not that, what's the word? Intimidating. I think that the thing with
can
growth
be.
is, it is. It is.
Yes, it can be.
But yeah, the more and more you embrace change, you grow. The more and more you embrace the different environments you find yourself in, and you surrender.
Yeah.
You
that's a big
accept and you surrender to that environment. There's so much growth and development that comes from that. But also wanting it first.
Yeah.
And
It's a daily thing as well.
Yeah.
As you were speaking, the song that closes out the playlist, actually Tiny Garden came to mind. That line, it's not gonna be a big production. This tiny garden. And
Fireworks.
I feel it every day.
I feel it.
And it's exactly that. It's the daily affirmation, daily reminder, daily improvement in 1%, and figuring it out. Honestly, it can be super intimidating. Again, space between where I am and what I'm trying to grow into can just be a chasm.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
be light and beautiful and
all of
growth
that.
and- yeah, it can be
and growth.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, growth is also very much accompanied by visibility, longevity, sustainability.
Visibility, how?
So it's more so how the artists are visible, how the women are visible, right? How are we seeing them? What does the representation look like?
Yeah.
What is the ratio to women artists in residencies or facilitators in this space?
Yeah.
I'm committed to seeing that, representation in its numbers, pretty much.
Really matters.
Because
Yes.
if you can't find us, you can't see us. How else are we going to take up more space? How else are we going to be more rooms, more spaces?
Get investment.
And then grow
all these
and
things.
develop,
Yeah.
all of that works.
Yeah. I like that.
So last but not least, considering all the rapid changes
Yeah.
and challenges within the art world, what advice would you offer to emerging artists and professionals seeking to establish themselves while maintaining a strong sense of self and purpose?
I like this question of advice because I'm very much also figuring it out. But from just working with artists in different avenues and also, I guess, figuring it out for myself, let's see, how do you maintain your voice? Understanding your why, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you an artist? And it's not always going to be clear, but I think being in constant pursuit of that to sort of ground you is important. And that's where the unique voice comes from. I would also say artists today, fortunately or unfortunately, kind of have to be entrepreneurs in a sense. You need to take on self-education. You have to, be talented and be brilliant at your craft, that's essential, but you also need to understand the business side. Have some kind of knowledge about contracts, about, galleries, about how the middlemen work. So nobody's taking advantage of you, right? So also you have ownership and agency over your practice and how it shows up in the world, right? How you are visible in the world. You have a bit of control of your narrative like that. Let's see. I spoke about self-care. So the practice of self-care, not burning out, having boundaries, taking breaks, the comparison element, knowing what tools you have, resources, what's good for you and what isn't. Seeking support. You spoke about supportive networks, collaborating wherever you can, because you don't know everything, that's for sure. And yeah, dude, exploring, not being afraid to explore different facets of your curiosity as well, even as you sort of try to carve out a niche for yourself. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but starting with your authenticity
is key.
Will be your compass, right? In the noise of the industry, in the noise of
everything,
all of that. Yeah, I think that's a good launch pad. Yeah.
How have you preserved your love for arts, just navigating in space? How has Muthoni?
How has I preserved it?
Yeah.
Good question. I think it's a really good question, actually, because it can be hard when you're working in it. It can get quite tense. But carving out a part of it that is just for me, because there's work, there's being in work mode, being aware of what's happening in the industry globally, having to have all these moving pieces in your mind. And what carving out a piece of it to just love and maintain looks like for me is conversations like these, which I have with a lot of my friends a lot of the time. Dabbling here and there in like creative pursuits. I'll do a pottery thing here, write a bit on that side. But going to things like film screenings, being very intentional in what I consume as well to fill up my cup if I've poured it out a lot in other ways. Screenings, musicals, performances. Being a patron for real, showing up to all of the different things, keeping that art enthusiast core, even as I try and make it a real profession, or as I am making it a profession and my life's work, right? It can be hard, but I just really am passionate. I just love art. I like beautiful things. I like seeing how someone can imagine something and materialize it. Like, to me, that's magic, truly. You see a hunk of clay and you create something incredible, or blank canvas and you imagine another world and bring it to light. Like that, I don't think the love for that can ever really disappear. Also, seeing how it's being used today to connect people, to help grieving people in all the conflicts in the world. Like, art is just that through line thread, and it's too much of a connection, I think, to fall out of love with. So that's where I'm at.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love this.
Thank you.
Muthoni, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Letting us into your world of, because I know you've been navigating this for a minute.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you letting us in, giving us I can say the exclusive. Is this a term we use here?
Exclusive. One time only.
Yeah, the exclusive insights to how you're truly navigating the space intentionally.
Yeah.
And carving out the part that also feels good to you and preserves the love for it as well.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Thank you
so much for joining us today.
Thanks for giving the space, honestly, and thanks for being part of the journey as well. Like you said, the palm moments, conversations, and everything else in between, it's all part of the journey. So thank you, boo. I've enjoyed this.
It's a wrap.
Thank you, guys.